What's up, you guys? We are here today to talk about training, all things training. I actually asked you guys to submit some questions for me, and you came up with so many that this is probably going to end up having a part 2. So we're just gonna go ahead and start with the basics today. We're gonna talk about progressive overload first and foremost. And this is something that's super easy to overlook in in-person training, especially when you don't have access to an app. So progressive overload is essentially adding more training volume over time. And training volume can be adding more weights every time, it can be adding more reps every time, or it can be a combination of the two. So let's give the example of squats. Let's say you do 100 pounds on squats. You do that every single time you go into the gym. Sometimes maybe you do 10 reps, sometimes you do 12, sometimes 15. That's kind of like a typical bodybuilding type rep range. Let's say you do that for years. You can actually get into a bad habit or a routine of doing the same thing every time, and pretty soon you're not growing, you're not changing, because you're not progressively overloaded at all. So what this should kind of look like in theory is that you're adding training volume over time for a while, a window of time, and then eventually you take some kind of deload and give your body a chance to have a break, and then you start the whole sequence over again. So there's a couple of ways that you can keep track of this. And I don't think that memory is going to be a possibility really. So either you can write it down or you can use some kind of app. Now, some training formats are going to have an app for you. For instance, in Transform Together, we have an app where you keep track of your weights like that, and you can progressively overload like that. If your trainer doesn't offer something like that at this time, then you can use like free apps that are out there that you kind of have to load your workout into, and then you can keep track from there. Or of course, there's always good old-fashioned just writing it down, having a notebook, or having a plan that you print out and then take in and make notes on. But there is a lot of value, I think, in sitting down and like mapping out your workout before you go in there. So like, say you're about to go train legs. If you have to physically write down your workout into your notebook or whatever you use, then it kind of puts you in that mindset where you're ready to train. You have a plan going in there. It's not like you're walking in the door, opening up your app like, oh yeah, I'm doing legs today. There's some kind of thought behind it, and I do think that that's valuable. Like I mentioned before, there are different ways to progressively overload. So I think one of the simplest ways is weights. So say that your trainer already has your workouts planned out for you, and you just have to go in every single week and try to increase the weight every single week on the same exercise, same rep schemes. So that would be a super easy way to do that. Now, sometimes there will be certain exercises that target smaller muscle groups, and it's hard to increase the weights each time. So just for instance, let's say you're doing lateral raises, so lifting dumbbells straight out to the side. Your shoulders are a smaller muscle group. It's probably not as strong as something like legs. And so you might not be able to jump from 10 pounds to 15 pounds. That might be basically, you can't even get it up without really bad form. So another thing that you can do to increase the training volume is to increase the reps a little bit. So if you have 15 reps and you're getting that pretty easily, maybe you knock it up to 20 reps. You can even do maybe 4 or 5 reps with that really heavy weight, and then drop back down and do more of the lighter weight so that you can continue having good form. But the takeaway there is that we don't want to go into the gym and do the same thing week after week, not increasing the weight at all, just being in a routine, because that's not going to force your body to adapt and change. How do I know which weights to select? There are two kind of ways that you can go about this, and each coach is going to have their different coaching style. There are going to be coaches out there who will have you do a 5 rep max or a 3 rep max or whatever the case is on certain exercises, and then they will actually program in how much weight you should use. But say you don't have access to kind of like a strength coach like that, what you're gonna have to do is just kind of get in there and try it. And my rule of thumb is that if you can complete all the reps and it's just a matter of going through the motions, it's not difficult for you, then that's probably too light of a weight. You should be really struggling by the last third of the reps, I would say, is a general rule of thumb. So for instance, say you have 15 reps to complete. By rep 10, you should be very much struggling and thinking like you're not even sure if you're gonna finish the set. A lot of times we get caught up in the number that's written for us. It's almost like a thing that we're gonna check off our list. There's actually a meme out there that says for every rep that you don't complete or leave on the table or whatever, God kills the kitten. So that's kind of like the thought behind, I think, a lot of people, is that they think my coach said 15, I'm getting 15. This is what I have to use weight-wise to get to the number 15. It's like, if you really want to force yourself to adapt and grow, I would so much rather you only get 12 reps and you're dying because you're pushing yourself so hard than getting all 15 and it's a breeze. Same thing goes for rest periods. On occasion, I'll have a client reach out and say, do I really have to take these rest periods? I don't need them. I just want to get this workout knocked out and move on with my day. But if you are meant to have 45 seconds to 60 seconds of a rest period, and you're looking at your stopwatch and you're at 20 seconds and you're like, all right, I'm just standing here, I'm ready to get back into it. That's a pretty solid indicator that you're also not lifting heavy enough, especially on those big compound movements such as squat, bench, and deadlift. Those ones should be very taxing and you should need those rest periods. If you're not, you have to go back and kind of think about intensity again. Am I really giving this my 100% effort? Am I meant to give that kind of effort here? Is there a long rest period? If there is a long rest period programmed in, there's likely a reason for that. So like on a set of squats, if you're doing sets of 15 and you're supposed to be going as heavy as you can, then that should be exhausting. You should like be looking at your timer and be like, oh my God, it's already been a minute, I have to do it again. Like that's how it's meant to be if there are rest periods strategically placed in there. Going along that too is kind of this idea of supersets. One of the questions I got yesterday was, how do I know which exercises to superset and what if I can't superset them? So this is a rest consideration as well. And there are different ways to go about this. Like, you can superset opposing muscle groups. That's usually what I would personally program myself. So for instance, your biceps and your triceps would be opposing muscle group, and when they're opposing, you can do pretty minimal rest between the two because they're not working the exact same muscle group. Now, if you have something that is like you're gonna do overhead press and you're gonna do lateral raises, obviously that's both of those are working shoulders, so you might need a little bit more rest period after that whole superset. So you can do opposing muscle groups, you can do the same muscle group at the same time. It's just really kind of up to you. If you are not able to complete a superset, at least for my team, this would be like if you're at a gym where you're supposed to superset dumbbell curls with rear delt flies and the dumbbells are downstairs and the rear delt fly machine is upstairs. Obviously that's not going to make any sense for you to be running up and down the stairs at the gym to superset those exercises. Your machines are going to get taken. That's not going to work. What I would do is just split it up and then maybe reduce the rest time just a little bit, because it's going to keep your heart rate a little bit elevated like that superset would. Try to stick to them as written as much as possible, but like I said, in a case like that, there's really nothing you can do and you kind of have to break them up. Of course, you could always find an alternative that would mimic that. So say you're upstairs with that rear delt machine, maybe there's a preacher curl right next to it. That's going to be close enough to a bicep curl that you could, use those two machines as a superset as well. What should I do for a warm-up? My thoughts for a warm-up are that you should get your blood flowing and then get your joints ready to perform the workout. So the way I personally go about that is that I will warm up on a piece of cardio equipment for 5 minutes. Not going at, not running, nothing like that. I would say I'm going at about 40% effort. I'll do that for about 5 minutes just to get myself warm, get blood flowing, we're ready to go. And then I will get into my workout and really kind of preview what I'm going to be doing and try to mimic those movements in 2 to 3 warm-up exercises. So for instance, if I'm going to be doing a shoulder workout and I'm starting with overhead press, I'm probably gonna start with some kind of external rotation to get the rotator cuffs warmed up, lubricated, ready to work. So external rotations, got my cute little 2-pound weight. External rotations are just keeping your elbows at your sides, rotating outward. This is just warming up the rotator cuff. I would do both sides. This is not meant to add more training volume. This is just to get yourself warmed up. We're not trying to push a lot of weight. We're not trying to progressively overload this part. This is just warming up. So I'd probably do about 20 reps for maybe 2 or 3 sets on that. And then I'm gonna mimic the first compound movement of my workout. So my workout, the big movement that day is gonna be overhead press. So I would literally just have 2 dumbbells, 2 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever. And I'm just ranging through the motion and just getting myself ready to perform that. So I'd probably stop there and then get into my lift at that point. What you don't wanna do is come in and immediately just jump into, you know, heavy weight with your first compound movement and possibly set yourself up for injury. So make sure you join us next week on the Lauren Show. No, I'm just kidding. So make sure you tune back into my channel next week. We are going to be covering a lot of questions that you guys submitted. Some of those are how to create your own training split, why women should train chest, best advice for sore muscles, how often should I change up my workout routine, and a little bit about pre and post workout nutrition too. I hope this overview was helpful for you, and leave me a comment down below if you have another question to get into that training video before I film it later this week. Thanks for watching.